Dr. Sharif Abdullah offers a unique, hopeful, and visionary perspective on the persistent challenges of our time. His perspective is shaped by his urban upbringing of poverty and violence, his Ivy League education, and his work with impacted communities in America and in 45 countries around the world. His spiritual outlook is rooted in the consciousness of dozens of religions, faith traditions, and spiritual practices. Sharif offers this unique viewpoint, helping us chart a course that explains where we've been, where we are now, and how we get to a positive future that works for all living beings.
Hello, Sharif here. And today we're going to talk about feeding. We're going to talk about how you feed yourself and how you feed the world around you. Now, I'm not talking about feeding ourselves physically with food tonight. I will talk about that some other day, but what I'm talking about now are the ways and types you feed all of the aspects of yourself, how you feed all of the aspects of your being. In our society, we wind up taking an inordinate amount of time feeding our fears and insecurities. We feed them and they get bigger. We wind up spending an awful lot of time feeding our anger. We keep feeding it and it gets bigger. We spend an amazing amount of time feeding our sensate being and feeding our lusts and our desires. And those lusts and desires get bigger. So the thing that you feed is the thing that gets bigger. Now, what is it that you're feeding? For some reason, people get the first part and then they don't get the second part. I watched for the last 4 years people feeding their anger and their fear about Donald Trump. I watched them over-talking him. I watched them saying amazingly negative things about him. All that they said fed him. So he gets bigger from that. All of the fear language around him he gets bigger behind that. And then they sat around and wondered why the election was so close. It was because they spent their time making him bigger, as opposed to spending their time talking about their vision and talking about their solutions and talking about the things that call to your heart. If you feed your heart gets bigger. If you feed the hearts of others, their hearts get bigger. When you name them, blame them, shame them, put them down, call them bad names, all of the anger, all of the animosity gets bigger, and you're to blame. I think it's time for us to take the step back and start recognizing this. I'm going to give you 2 stories about this. At one point in time in my life, about 40 years ago, I was a gun owner. And I was a gun owner because I lived in North Carolina, and I'd heard all sorts of things about living in North Carolina, and I figured I'll make myself more safe and I'll make myself more secure. I'll buy myself a revolver, Smith & Wesson 38, short nose, and I recognized those, like, what if somebody's coming far away? Maybe I need another gun. So I got myself a long gun, semi-automatic, 5 cartridges in my clip. And then I said, well, what if there's more than 5 of them? Maybe I should get another clip. So I got a 10 cartridge clip. By the time I had worked up to 2 20 shot banana clips, I realized what was happening. Every time I bought a gun or expanded my gun, I felt more insecure. Every time I did that, I felt, oh, gee, I need to get more. I need to get more. And that's how the U.S. military is built. Because we never have a point where we're satisfied with who and what we are. You'll remember some time ago, I read a quote from Vimala Thakar. I'll read it again. Your negative feeling has little to do with the other person. It emerges from the discontent with the reality of your own life. The negative feeling is not a feeling directed toward others. It is a feeling directed against yourself. The feeling arises when you are not reconciled to the fact of what you are. Once I recognize what I am, that my security comes from right here, my undefended, my uninhibited heart. Once that is open and wide open, there is no gun that can protect me. So I gave up the guns about 25, 30 years or so ago, and I don't feel less protected. I feel more protected because my heart is bigger. Okay, second story. I was working with an intern some years ago, and we had to visit someone's office, and we went to the office. We had to wait a little bit, so my intern picked up. I don't remember whether it was Cosmopolitan or Vogue, but picked up one of those magazines and was going through it. And I said something like, really subtle and indirect, like, that stuff will rot your brain out. And she laughed and she says, I don't read these. But when I see one around like this, I'll just pick it up and I'll go through it. And then she closed the magazine and got a faraway look in her eye. And she said, every time I read one of these, I feel bad about myself. Now, that's the purpose of the magazine. For you to feed this sense of insecurity about who you are. So I'm going to buy some of the stuff. I'm going to buy the clothes I see in the magazine. I'm going to buy the perfume I see in the magazine. I'm going to buy the makeup I see in the magazine. I'm going to take Cosmo's 20 tips to turn men on. I'm going to do all that stuff. And then the next month I have to do it again. And the next month I have to do it again, because all that does is feed your fear and insecurity. It doesn't feed the nature of who you are. And once you feed the nature of who you are, you don't need to look at that stuff anymore. So our challenge is, can I recognize how to get fed? How, instead of feeding my fear and insecurity, how do I feed my security in terms of the person that I am? How do I feed my vision of a new dawning, a new day, and then help my children and grandchildren, help all others see that vision? How do I feed my deep need for joy, for fulfillment? And I don't mean ha ha he he, go watch a movie. I mean, how am I reconciled to my own sense of being and my own sense of fulfillment? How do I reconcile myself to my own power? So many of us are used to running down the power of others. Fight the power, that we don't recognize how to cultivate the power within ourselves, cultivate the power with others, so that we then Instead of fighting the power, we become the power. How do we learn how to cultivate our own hearts? Probably our most neglected organ in our bodies. We think of it as a blood pump, and it's so much more than that. How do we do this? How do we turn all these switches on? And then how do we turn off all the fears and all the angers and all the lusts? The best way to do that is to do that together, so that those of us who are doing it can help each other through the process. It's like going to a very different kind of gymnasium, the gymnasium of the heart. The gymnasium of the mind is the gymnasium of the soul. We're going to be doing a lot of that stuff here at Commonway over the next weeks and months and maybe even years. The sooner you get involved with it, the sooner we can together chart a course to a new humanity that works on all of our hearts and works for all. So, thank you.
You are invited to participate in the discussions and activities that will define a positive future for all. We are at the cusp of the expansion of our human consciousness, beyond the limitations of our past. Together, we can envision a world that embraces our human potential. Together, we can create a world that can truly work for all living beings.